It's good to be back. Of course, these early first few practices are more of a ramp-up stage that we're in relative to time and what we can do with pads. It was pretty uneventful relative to yesterday. Everyone's arrival, meeting schedule has been good. And then obviously it's a little different just with the construction. And, you know, I think we're fortunate to still be open for business, if you will, for our fans, and that's a good thing. But any questions?
What's the most important thing out of these first couple of days? Is it just retention?
Well, look, you're getting back into it. You know, they left in good shape. These guys all had, you know, when you talk to them, you know, the 5 weeks between when we were last here and now, you know, these guys all do a good job of training, whether they're here local or somewhere else. But the installation, you know, I just mentioned to them, it's a process. You know, we're going to have 4 straight days of installation, and then when the pads come on, we'll be back with the same installation. So it's retaining, you know, getting a chance to repeat and put the mistakes behind you. So there's a number of things. You know, getting back into wearing your football shoes on the grass, moving around. You know, I thought today was a good start. We weren't long out there. So yeah, it's just, you know, it's building it up. And you know, before, I mean, years ago you'd have your report day, and that afternoon there'd be a conditioning test. It's just changed a lot.
How did Dre Greenlaw look out there? It looked like he was
good,
pretty much
good. He looked good.
What about Cortland's situation there, Coach? It looked like he was out there but didn't do a whole lot of.
No, he did. He was. Look, there's a number of guys. You're going to ask me about a few contracts. They're all, you know, being worked on. Something we really would never discuss with you. And those guys are getting work done. So, yeah, there's been good communication, and I'm just going to leave it at that relative to the specific players.
In your experience, Coach, what do you find more difficult, building to the program, turning around, or sustaining success?
It's a good question. So the startup part, I've only done one other time. You know, in other words, I have experience, and yet it's not like you get multiple opportunities of, and so things have to be in place for that to be successful. In other words, you can be hindered or you can be affected in a negative manner if things aren't in place and there's not a willingness to make change. And fortunately here, that wasn't the case, and one of the important things about this job. But then I would say that's sustained success, and we haven't looked at, you know, last year, for instance, is, you know, obviously we made progress, but getting to where we want to be is, and then staying there, I think would probably be, it would depend on the organization. The first part of your question you asked, it's up in some places is impossible, and so then that's not a good deal. That's a hard one. But if you're at the right place, I think the latter becomes mentally more challenging and keeping an edge with your team and then, you know, over a period of time you recycle, you know, a roster. That can happen. I saw that happen. So I think that can be a little bit more challenging.
Sean, as you guys are going through and the future of this defense, how important Zach Allen? You know, do you feel like last year kind of set a new bar for the expectation?
Well, look, number one, there was no new bar. He's very important to what we're doing. We got to be mindful of the snaps. You know, I would say he probably played a few too many snaps. So we got to be, that especially at that position. But he's an important part of what we do.
You mentioned the concept of maybe playing some snaps with Nick also. What do you?
You just there's and I wouldn't make the comparison between Nick and Zach, but the playing percentage you're looking at, and you're wrestling, the whole game, and so you just got to be mindful of the player's health and then getting the best performance. So that's easy to fix. Yeah, have I answered your question? All right.
You answered you talked about both of those players' snaps after the season. Is that something that's difficult to gauge during the season and adjust?
No, listen, I spent more time talking about Zach's pitch count than Nick's. But no, I think it's just being mindful of going into a game with your depth, how you want to, how you want that to unfold, and then look, it's easy to adjust, and there may be a game where it gets a little higher, but one of the things, a strength of his is his stamina and staying power, and his ability to play in, play out, and but I think it's easy to monitor.
With Allen's, how much did it matter to even get him a little bit of mini camp action, and how have you started seeing him?
I think it was important. It was important. Look, he's got the playbook for the 5 weeks he's not here. He's a quick study. He's been in 2 offenses, and he's someone who's smart. So it was good to get him in here. I think it was important.
How much pain was P.J. Hawkins last season was back, and how good is it to see him? He seems to obviously be a lot better after his surgery.
Yeah, I mean, he's healthy. You'd have to ask him about the degree of pain, but look, this was one of the cleaner report dates that I can recall relative to just really one player that's still, got some work to do. Now, look, these players we're discussing, whether it's Dre or any of these guys coming back off of injury, we're going to monitor the snaps. We're gonna have a calendar where some days they're not going to practice. I'm telling you now because you'll ask me then. And it's 3 groups all the time. It's the recently injured, it's the injury history, and then it's the veteran group of players that will put together a little bit of a load management program. I don't want to call it that, but it's us looking ahead over the next 4 weeks and getting ahead of the practice schedule. So those guys would all fall into that.
Sean, I'm sure you've heard people say that you and Bo have a terrific marriage as quarterback and head coach. If you can take us behind the scenes a little bit, what does that marriage
Well, I mean, look, I think that can vary depending on. It's easier to say that when you're talking to a head coach that works primarily with the offensive side of the ball and is involved in the play calling. But I think oftentimes it's used in a way, and sometimes I said this, I think, in the offseason, like this was the perfect fit. Who's not interested in that player? It almost discredits the athlete, but it fits the narrative for those that had him ranked where they had. So we're never going to get away from our narratives, are we? We're going to hold on to we were right with that narrative. And so, that was the right fit. That's a great marriage, and that explains any success and all success. And so, but I think maybe it applies more to a head coach that's maybe more involved in one side of the ball or the other. And look, he's someone that works his tail off, wants to improve. The whole off season is planned out. He's gone and visited Breeze for 4 or 5 days, and that's Tom House in here. And there's a lot that he wants to absorb in a fast period of time, and that's a great thing for a young player like that. We're never just going to pick up from where we left off, but there's a lot of building to do when we look at last year, and a lot of positive things to look at. Yeah, that's what I would think of.
How much better does the coach sleep at night knowing he believes he has his quarterback?
Well, they're hard to find, and so I don't know that I have this little thing that measures the quality of my sleep, so I don't know if it's changed drastically. I'll still get a 70-something once in a while because I'm up eating or something. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at my 8 sleep over 3 years.
This time last year, you guys were not expected to be very good. 5-6 wins on the season. This offseason, the tone is radically different around the country. Does your approach change to your team?
Well, it does a little, and in a good way. I mean, look, it's what you want. In other words, there are so many different ways it's met. You're playing on a national stage more, and there might be unique travel more, but that's what we're wanting. And we're not a finished product by any means. We're still, there's a lot of parallels to that building across the way here. We're still work in progress, and yet it's not the national expectations. It's just there was a belief a year ago, I think, by many of us internally that we had a team that could compete, certainly for an opportunity in the division and for an opportunity to get in the playoffs. And those standards and they can't be just high for the coaches or just the whole group needs to see the opportunity and where we can go, and so look, that's what, when the whole thing started 2 years ago, this is kind of where we were hoping to be going into year 3, and it's exciting. Yeah. Him just reaching out and look, just coordinating some time to dive into the offense, the schedule, the calendar, his schedule, his work week in season. Tom House is someone that, all of that is just stuff he's doing on his own, and again, that's what you're looking for.
For you as a play caller, as a play designer, your year with Bo, how much more comfortable are you kind of knowing what he likes, what sort of things are going to fit in this offense, and how much does that help you out here?
Well, we're constantly looking at that, and we're looking at it as it pertains to him, but then just as much the pieces around him. What are the things that these guys do well? And we're learning with a handful of these guys that we haven't had yet. We haven't had a chance to see in pads yet, and it'll be exciting to kind of see what we have. That evolves each year, and will continue to this year.
I think you said earlier in the offseason you sort of relished the chance to counterpunch defenses. Obviously, defensive coaches have a chance to watch you guys and try to catch up with him. What is it that
I hear that a lot.
Is that overblown, that idea?
I think so. Look, they're watching we're all watching the film throughout the year, so there's not this one off season where there's a group of defensive coaches sitting in a room for 2 weeks looking at Bo Nix film. I mean, the study and looking at the system, the players in the system. I've heard that, and I kind of cringe when I hear it.
The idea of not with Bo particularly, but you hear about sophomore slumps to the quarterbacks.
I do.
What is that also? You don't put much stock in that.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of them. I'm trying to think of the MTV one-hit wonders, and there's not a lot of them that come to mind. I mean, I think it's a term we use, but I can't think of examples that match that term of rookie quarterbacks that excelled, and then all of a sudden what happened their second year.
I feel like C.J. Stroud was unbelievable his rookie year, and then maybe they struggled more overall as an offense, but there could be a lot of reasons why. Yeah,
but I didn't look at his season. I mean, I think they went to the postseason, and now that's a good question. But I think there's bigger picture items relative to this team.
Just to clarify, Bo Nix, did he just go to New Orleans for 4 or 5 days in between the?
No. Drew lives in San Diego, and he spent some time going there. Just with the schedule and wanting to know more about the offense, and so I'm sure, I don't even know when he went, but I just know he went, and yeah, I mean it was him doing more research at the position.
When he has Tom House in, do you have any conversations? Do you talk to Tom House?
Yeah.
What's that like, considering we're
Interesting. He's amazing. Well, he's a baseball guy. It's fascinating. He's real smart. You mentioned he caught Hank Aaron's record-breaking home run. Literally caught it in the dugout. So he's a baseball guy that really's done a great job with a lot of throwers, and that's the best way to describe him. Whether it's a baseball motion or a football motion. Those opportunities we get to just have a lunch or sit and visit are pretty special for me. He's pretty sharp.
Do you see anything that Tom has done manifesting yet in what Bo is doing?
No, there's a lot of just management of your arm, delivery. No, it's none of us will see exactly. There's just certain warm-up techniques, if you will. So you're not going to see a different release, but you're going to, it's just, the arm care for a pitcher might be different than the arm care for a quarterback, and then how you warm up, there may be some parallels, but I don't know that we're going to see it, with our eyes.
Sean, you guys found a lot of creative ways to get Marvin the ball in ways that you said more mimic punt return and that kind of thing. How much was that how much is that an enjoyable part of what you do, of just trying to kind of get creative?
Well, when something like that happens, then you're constantly thinking, are we collectively in that offensive staff room or defensively, are we doing things that suit each player? And he's a good example of there was a niche of other things that we were able to do that, and we kind of saw his confidence grow exponentially throughout the course of the season. So we think about that not just with one player, but the tight ends, the running backs. That's especially when there's something that's successful, that's enjoyable.
What are your early impressions of Jeremy Crawshaw once?
Well, we just finished 50 minutes of practice, so it's hard to have early impressions.
Well, through OTAs and mini camps.
Good. There's some, I would say, it's kind of like right now, the fireworks, there's some booms, and then every once in a while there's one of those, we got to work on the ones that just that go right. We got to get those handled. It certainly is the leg talent. You can see that. It's exciting.
When you have as much continuity and carryover roster-wise as you do this year, do you structure, you sort of outlined the starting over on the installs when you put pads on, but do you change how much you're installing a day over maybe like a year ago or 2 years ago?
Yeah, the amount wouldn't change, but some of the things that we're installing might change. And I think there is carryover with the roster, and yet there's still, a number of people. And to answer your question, though, we manage the amount, because how much can you get practiced? Now, there's some tweaks to even today that if we looked at last year's script, there's a couple things that we've done differently terminology-wise. I'm sure defensively the same way. In fact, I know. And so, but it has to match the time on the field relative to, the amount. But and when the practices get longer, then obviously you're afforded more installation, or you're able to get more stuff done.
Showing back to Marvin, he's a good guy that, his progression, I feel like it's necessary. It's key to kind of get him the ball.
Well, all those guys, listen, we're trying to get, a number of those guys the ball. He certainly is good with it in his hands.
Sean, I've obviously been doing this for a long time. You get recognition as a play caller. But do you still, at this stage in your career, try to get better in the offseason that you're coming out of and like learn and grow?
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
look like?
Well, it's studying other successful offenses. It's constantly looking at the change and the evolution, whether it might even be college tape. And so, gosh, the call sheet from like my first year as a head coach in 06 and to where it's like there's a constant change and evolution relative to scheme and your own personnel. And so that's just one small area of it. And then I would say from a practice standpoint, how are we more efficient than maybe we would have been? I think as a teacher, if you're not evolving and changing year to year, because obviously there's things we're learning that we didn't know then you're going backwards. So I would definitely say yes to that. And that's the thing that keeps you up, is to, there's certain things that'll always be in place. You walk the field, make sure it's clear, there's no injury risk for the player. There's certain staples as a coach that can't ever change or be compromised, but there's so many things. The way we meet is entirely different. There's music, there's video. There was a time when it was just an acetate on an overhead projector, and so all of that, the presentation is different.
Sean, kind of following up on that, you watch the touchdowns across the league every Monday. Do you tend to put those in the off-season, or will you drop them in during the season?
We'll drop them in files. We'll drop them in tight red files, deep red files, short yardage file. We'll drop them in places that make them easy to access in season on a Tuesday night where you're looking for a Wednesday night an idea. And so, the efficiency, my perfect room, we don't have it yet. The perfect room would be the audio command, and then it's on the screen right now, and it's a play from 6 years ago. And now that requires a lot of input work. We're not splitting the atom there, but that's the perfect room because time is everything, And so now realistically, that play that I'm talking about, it would take us 3 minutes to get it up on the screen. We'd look at it again, see if it fits, but having those pictures are important. Really important for the player to see. Does some weeks, does it fit? Yeah.
Well, I think as a play caller, to borrow stuff from people. Do you put it in during the season, or do you file it away and in the spring?
Well, we say we borrow it, but it's really our stuff that. Yeah, I think that what's changed, honestly, is you didn't have access to the All-22. You guys can buy the All-22 now. Some of you may watch the All-22. And there was a time when I can recall in college or in the early part of my NFL career where that was only available to the member clubs. So the clubs could see the games. But there'll be a play run on a Sunday, and the following Saturday, it'll be run 38 times. Every one of these college teams, has the All-22, and they have the resources of staff that are like looking at teams and cutting up ideas. So a good idea on either side of the ball or in the kicking game will make its way to the masses much quicker than it used to. It would be in the off season, you take a trip to a pro team as a college coach, and they'd put you in a room and you'd watch game film and you'd make notes and you may get some good thoughts or idea. That'd be one team where that same college program now has access to every team's play, every game, and so it happens much quicker.
When you look back at your past processes, is there anything you look back at and say, man, I can't believe you did it that way for so long?
Well, that always exists. I mean, I go back to when I first was a full-time coach at Indiana State, and I say, man, I can't believe we did this on third down. Or I can't believe we did this in our preparation. Like, but that's what we knew, and if it was our best then you can sleep at night. But that ability to adapt and change constantly and look inward at what you're doing and look schedule-wise. You know, we tinkered with a few things that we're not just turning the page over. I really think that's more of an educational thing. You know, I mean, we grew up with the 4 food groups, and then somewhere along the line, people are telling us half of them aren't good for you. That's pretty traumatic.
When we talk to players on a good team like yours, their goals, oh, we want to win a Super Bowl. It's kind of that reaction.
Say it again.
When you ask players who are on a good team what the goal is, they all say we want to win a Super Bowl. What is it you see or look for players to know that they're getting to a goal like that? Is it the details and how they're in meetings and practice, that every thing matters? What is it you look for?
I think, look, it has to be a comfortable topic. But we're in such a league where this is a journey, and, you know, briefly yesterday I outlined a few things that are coming. But it starts more with the division and seeding and you know, we have to start faster than we have the last 2. And so you try to, how do I say this? You try to point at the nearest goal, and some of these ones that are more visible, but you can't be afraid of talking about the end game. That's got to be a comfortable subject, and then you've got to be comfortable saying, hey, look, this is what's required, and you know, you don't get a best of 7. And so, but I think you start with some of the objectives that are a little bit more clearly visible in the short term.